guys, welcome back to another episode of Summertime Render. This is episode 9 we're breaking down today. A very informative episode. A lot of things have come out the woodwork. A lot of new information to grasp and dig around at. Before we get going, make sure you guys are subscribed. We're aiming for 1k of subscribers by the end of the year. Can we make it? Can we do more interactive stuff? Can we do live streams? Start talking about anime as a whole? That is our overall goal. So if you're not subscribed already, go and give that button a little bit of love. And let's get going. So this is episode number 9. In true Summertime Render fashion, we're going to start with a jaw-dropping twist. We are literally half a minute in and we see the second Ushio. Two Ushios together, the doppelganger. The real Ushio met the fake Ushio. We can see very happily in the video, they are happily getting on and even filming together. I do like the double act that starts to happen this week. We get to see them interacting with one another and it's nice to see just a little bit of comedy. It's just a little bit of lightheartedness mixed in with a very dark plot because it is a very heavy plot, so we can't really beat around the bush there. So any nice little moment where they're happily interacting or doing the Spider-Man thing when they're pointing at each other, I like that because it's a welcome break to the heaviness that is definitely coming our way at some point as well. And I think things are about to get even more crazy with the implications at the end of the episode. Both of the Ushios are good. Even if one is faulty, that Ushio is still good. She was helping herself. She wasn't killing the other Ushio. She wasn't trying to replace her or anything. Both of them can unlock the phone, have the ability to unlock that phone, which is cool because they obviously have the same thumbprints. But it is great to see the hilarious double act. The fact that she says, "We are both me," explain that she has accepted the idea that both of them are still her. You might be a shadow, but you are still me. And this is exploring a philosophical debate, the idea of the self, the idea of ID. If you were suddenly to clone yourself, would that clone still be you? Who would be the real you? Would you both be you? I think the best way of portraying this argument is looking at Star Trek has the beam machine. I haven't watched it in a very long time. I've watched some of the movies and that's it. Much to my dad's dismay, he's a huge Star Trek fan. But the idea that it takes apart your particles and rearranges you to get you somewhere else, would you still be you? If all your particles were suddenly rearranged, put back together again, are you you? Did you technically die and come back to life as a different you? If you want to have a bit of fun with that one, definitely go and read up. It's a mind-boggling one because I don't know how I feel about the idea myself, because I believe that if I was copied, we're both me, but after that point gonna have different experiences. I'm me up until the point, but then my next self would react to stuff in the way that I would, because you react to things through your environment, how you've grown up. We would both react to situations that we came across separately in a way that the main Becca would react and handle situations. It's a mind-blowing one. Definitely go and have some fun with this argument. So we get to learn about the events prior to the start date of our skip. So we still really need to know how to push that start date on the loop forward. Is it even possible? Because a lot of key things start to happen prior to the skip. And we look at the day that Ushio ended up dying, but we also see a day leading up to it. Initially, it's Shuri who comes to Ushio stating, "I'm being stalked." It's Ushio at that point who doesn't initially take her seriously. So they're like, oh, it's just a stalker, it's nothing. But eventually, her and her tag team of herself, something unexplained just happened to her. So she has to take Shuri seriously at this point. So it's nice to see real Shuri. We also told that Alan is suffering from athlete's foot. You know me, I'm taking all the information. You never know what information is going to be key. Maybe this athlete's foot is key to the plot. Who knows? Or we're just shaming poor Alan for having some fungus on his foot. When Ushio ends up being copied on the beach, it's a possibility that they were trying to go for Shuri, but Ushio gets in the way. Or the Shadow knew that Shuri had spoken to her about shadows, told that it's Shuri who kills Ushio, which we do see in the lineup, but whoever copies them first is neither Shuri or Ushio. We don't know what shadow was prowling after Shuri. They end up copying Ushio. We've seen this already where they look up and they see the shadow on the rocks. Both of them are aware of the superstition that is the idea of shadows, so they both look up and see her. We've seen this information given to us on the prior loop already. Mio tells Ushio that you're in love with Shin. It'd be really painful for her to accept because they both love the same person. Shin has been away from the island for quite some time and we can see Ushio is still very angry at this. Ushio discovers the shadow in his shower. She was actually very close to killing her or dissolving her because unknowingly she points the shower head at her. Obviously it's the only thing she's got to hand. Current present loop, we've seen that water can remove part of a shadow. That's why the current Ushio hasn't got an arm. They use water and the affected area of her body was gone. She was very close to either dissolving her or just removing parts of her, which is quite scary. I do like the bit when they're just pointing at each other, which is definitely going to be the cover thumbnail for this video. It's a Spider-Man meme. They're literally just Spider-Manning it up right right now. And there's even a third one later down the line as well. So they could have theoretically had the Spider-Man meme going on. Who is the real Ushio? But it doesn't matter because the both of them are determined to save Shuri. They are both determined to work together, which is great because you've got the perfect partners in crime. New puzzle pieces start to fall into place. The clinic in the end time loop. I'm going to call it the end time loop, the loop when we saw right to the end and the big shadow and the deity whose name has escaped me again, and we see her at the end. We actually see a bit when they're in the clinic, and I think it's the clinic because we see these guys, these doctors, and they say something and then they all vanish because everyone technically dies in this loop. It feels important. I have a feeling this is going to be very key. Ushio also says she feels a familiarity with the place, whether the shadows have a link to this place. This place is very important. It's a great urban exploring moment as well when we've got the two of them, one trying to be brave, one scared, both angles of Ushio. Aspects of Ushio, and she tries to be brave for the scared part of herself, which is really nice to see them reacting with one another. Jump scare moment of the bird as well. The bird vanishing is definitely a shadow because we do discover this week as well that shadows can become things, and that might be part of that, becoming a bird as well as possible, which makes it even more terrifying because shadows now can be anywhere. A shadow could technically be your phone. We were told previously that a person could only be copied once. We see that information isn't quite accurate because we do see a third Ushio created, but this Ushio isn't like the faulty Ushio. This Ushio is also animalistic, not fully formed initially, but then it does fully form. Number 3 is attacking mindlessly, so whether this is the fact that it's not a shadow fully, or it hasn't manifested, or it's still faulty. And number 3, if you were copied over and over again, the information gets weaker perhaps. Maybe that's what it means. You only get one fully conscious form of yourself and then everything else after that is wrong. But through trial and error and a really cool scene with them actually fighting the third shadow, we are able to initially work out who the real shadow is. When it comes to Ushio, she ends up taking a bit of a beating because her shadow is mixed in with the other shadow and they both take a beating when the shadow is struck. But it's cool because we can see brave Ushio taking on that third Ushio and actually coming out triumphant, figure out some of her powers and kill a shadow. So we've got Shin, we have the twins which are in one body, and we've now got Ushio who have actually been able to kill a shadow at some point. Shadows are able to fully heal if the real person is still alive, which is unlikely because they are so key on destroying that person because they apparently cannot stay alive if the real person is still around. It makes sense that your healing abilities would come from the real one, but you kill them because you want to be real. Whether that means that shadows need to coexist or something, whether that's leading for quite far in the future and eventually maybe they coexist or something, that could be quite cool. It seems like the shadows are pretty much dedicated in wiping out the original because that means they can't be themselves. They eventually will fade. Ushio ends up accepting her copy and ends up having a crying moment, which showing us that shadows can show some emotion. But again, the shadow Ushio is said to be faulty, so whether this is just a one-off case, it's nice to see that Ushio comes to terms with her shadow being herself. It could be quite easy to her to see the shadow as a different entity, and when at the end when one sacrifices the other and still goes go me, most people, you could accept that somebody would see that other person as a different entity and would try and be not the one to survive or die. Fight between your own self may be occurring. So it's a nice moment. Going back to that debate I'm telling you to go and research into, it's really interesting reading, very, very confusing as well. Data unlocked, more puzzle pieces coming this time, and through a really cool ability, we are able to replay the events that prelude the start date, and I really hope we can push the start date back because we've got a lot of events we need to stop on this loop round. We are initially told that the replay can't be tampered with, so you can't change anything, you can't interact. Obviously, a few bits of information we've been given haven't quite been correct, and that again makes things like this anime even more confusing because you don't know what is real and what is not, and information given to you that is told to be true later down the line is proven not to be true. So this is one of those which is proven wrong later on because we do get interference right at the end. Initially it means that the real humans there can't interact with the past. You can't change the past because the past already happened. Ushio's death, which is absolutely terrifying because Ushio actually witnesses herself dying. We do get some cool information too though. Ushio was very curious about shadows. She's able to work out that shadows can become objects, which is interesting to tell us, but also terrifying because even though 2 necklaces is a cool thing and the real Ushio wore the fake Ushio at the end, and that explains why there's 2 necklaces at one point. I think Shin even has 2 necklaces, which is cool. It does mean that the shadows out there, if that's not a faulty thing, they could be anywhere. They could literally be anywhere, and this game could really already be won, which is absolutely terrifying. Data not witnessed can't be replayed. So if nobody was watching Shuri when she vanished, you don't know what happened. We don't know if something grabbed her. We don't know if she ran off wanting to go and swim, which is really weird for a child who holding onto her ring. So it shows that she can't swim, and she's definitely asking Mio, can you help me to swim? Something lured her into the water, whether she saw herself and she went for it. She was already seen as suspicious against herself because she thought she was being stalked, which would have been weird. Something lured her into the water, but we didn't get that bit of information just yet. Shadow under the water. Ushio can hear this. That is when Ushio goes out to try and get ahead of everybody. She wants to save everybody. She knows that Shadow's a bad thing. She can work out that the thing drowning Shuri, but there's also the shadow on her. She tries to sacrifice herself to stop anybody else getting into danger. Anybody could have got to Shuri first. That could have been anybody. It didn't have to be Ushio at this point. Ushio ends up dying to save both herself and Shiori. Selfless moments of the anime that we have seen, but we also get to see those strangle marks now. Shadow Shuri was dragging and killing herself, and sadly she doesn't get rescued in time because it's a very difficult situation, because she also does something to the shadow Ushio. Seemingly resets her or puts her back into the shadow form, but she doesn't fully get rid of her, so she's just like this blob. I did think at one point she was the shell, because we could see the shell beside her falling down, so whether she saved herself by becoming a shell, part of her survived in that shell form, and then later she finds herself on the beach, and then she is able to reconnect with Shin. It takes her a few days maybe to repair the damage. That's why she doesn't appear immediately, so she probably repairs it if only a small part of her survived. If the shadow isn't destroyed in its entirety, it can still reform and come back, so maybe that's what happened. We are not safe in the replay. With this action, I think that shadows are vessels for this greater being. I don't remember her name, and it was given, and I know Shin has her eye as well, and she's been searching for Shin. Something about the shadow is very important. She's definitely key and central to the plot. She's been searching for them, and she's able to use the shadows as a network, and what comes to mind here is the hive mind. And again, if you want to go Star Trek, the Borg, it reminds me of the Borg. All of these people are able to act as a vessel. She can control them, tell them where to go. She's probably given them instructions on what to do. She's controlling them from the shadows. Make a cool pun about it, right? Ushio, even if Faulty was still a shadow, so she was able to connect via the shadow of Ushio because she was replaying it, and that was her providing that information, that data. So she can travel via data. She's a virus. There you go. She is a virus. I'm going to call her the virus queen. She's looking for Shin, and she's probably worked out that Shin is very dangerous to the plot, and now Shin is rocking this really cool new tattoo. Cool tat dude. Now labelled him. Whether this makes it easier to locate him, whether that's going to stay with him each of the loops, that would be interesting to see what happens. She's definitely in good checkmate position. Everybody's been checkmated again, and it doesn't feel like it's going to end very well. A fantastic episode. I really enjoyed this episode. A lot of things starting to deepen, a lot of puzzle pieces coming to mind. I like the different aspects having a faulty shadow makes, and the fact that Ushio was aware of this and they were trying to leave information to them. And now that we've seen prior and what actually happened to Ushio, and we've seen all this information, it makes it a lot more interesting, and we've got maybe this virus at the center of it that is controlling this, and this virus must be at least 30 plus years old because these shadows have been going on for many decades. It's going to be interesting to see how far back that goes. Can we push the start date? That is the big question right now. Can we push that start date forward, or there's no point because that start date was getting further and further, so eventually you're going to run out of time. If we can't push the start date back, we are at a very bad place. Is that even possible? So a fantastic episode, really enjoyed it. Can't wait to see where this rabbit hole goes. This is a 25 episoder, so this will continue next season. You guys know I'm continuing this next season. I'm enjoying this one. It's not going to get dropped, I promise. I know I dropped an anime on the channel, but it was more for personal reasons than anything else. So I'm enjoying this one for now. A lot of the breakdowns on the channel next season are sequels. I really hope that you guys can still join in, because it would imply that you guys have seen the first seasons. At least you guys get to stay with me. Thank you again, guys. Thanks for the continued support. Have a good day, guys. Bye-bye.